the evolutionary history of life, the fate of the loser in any conflict was usually decided by immediate death or escape. But at this stage, a concept even more brutal than death began forming in the human mind: the concept of the prisoner. This was not merely a word, it was a dark evolutionary milestone marking the moment humans began seeing their own kind, not as rivals to eliminate, but as living assets to be possessed. As intelligence advanced rapidly, weapons were no longer just physical extensions of the arm, but extensions of abstract thinking. The creation of tools capable of storing energy and launching projectiles from afar reveals that the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and predicting the future, had developed. This tool distanced humans from direct risk during the hunt, creating a safe buffer between hunter and prey. But this distance also cultivated a colder, more calculating hunting psychology. Violence is not an invention of civilization, but an inheritance of natural selection. When resources became scarce in arid lands, competition intensified not only between species, but most brutally among individuals of the same species. The use of tools, originally created for survival, being repurposed to inflict pain on one's own kind, marks a dark turning point in behavioral psychology. The fascination toward the stranger's tool shows cognitive capacity. They recognize technological disparity, and their instinctive reaction is not to learn, but to seize and destroy. Despoiling the opponent's possessions is not merely theft, it strips away their ability to survive. When an individual loses their weapon and their food, they are cast to the bottom of the survival hierarchy. In the primeval world, there is no law, no compassion, only the rule of the strong and the necessary cruelty to protect one's tribe from intruders. The leather rope around the neck is a physical metaphor for subjugation. The respiratory system and blood vessels supplying the brain, the body's weakest vital points, are placed under direct control of another. Any attempt to resist is punished instantly by biological mechanisms, oxygen deprivation and pain. Dominance is no longer only about muscle strength, but about imposing will through restraining tools. The march into the darkness of the forest is not just a geographical relocation, but an entry into a new state. The state of a being who has lost autonomy. The rope holder is not merely dragging a body, he is dragging a destiny, transforming a fellow human into a living possession. Rapid learning and adaptability, a hallmark of a large brain, stand out even in dire circumstances. Observing the captor's stride, predicting movement to avoid pain, demonstrates survival intelligence. The brain constantly analyzes the environment and the dominator's behavior to adjust bodily reflexes. This is forced synchronization. To survive, the weaker individual must abandon his own rhythm and conform to that of the strong. This is the first and cruelest lesson of slavery. Your existence depends on how well you obey your master's movements. Human curiosity fuels development, but also destruction when paired with ignorance. Hitting, bending, misusing the object reflects cognitive limits. They try to apply old knowledge to a new tool and fail. A prisoner's frantic attempts to protect the bow are not merely about preserving property, but preserving knowledge. He understands this tool represents survival, an advantage his group painstakingly developed. The captor's decision to keep the bow instead of breaking it marks a spark of primitive wisdom, restraining destruction in order to preserve a potential yet unknown. This is the seed of material cultural accumulation, keeping what one does not yet understand in hopes of mastering it later. The arrival of a bound stranger shocks this closed structure. The tribe's reactions, curiosity, touching, pulling hair, are ways of assessing threat and determining his position in the hierarchy. Separating the prisoner from the warm, lit center of the cave and pushing him into the cold outskirts establishes spatial dominance. The cave becomes divided into zones of power, the warm center for members and the cold edge for outsiders. Isolation, combined with denial of food, is the harshest psychological punishment for a social species, affirming the prisoner's lowly status, present but not belonging. Food in the primordial world is power. The distribution of food mirrors the tribe's hierarchy. Hunters, the strongest, receive the highest energy portions to replenish their labor. Women and children receive the next share to sustain reproduction. The outsider and the prisoner is excluded entirely. Hunger is a non-negotiable biological force. It blurs reason and pride, pushing the creature back to primal instincts, acquire energy at all costs. Throwing a leftover bone onto the ground is not generosity. It is a ritual of humiliation. It forces the captive to behave like a scavenger, lowering his head to the ground to pick up scraps with his mouth. The arrow piercing the animal hide is a shocking demonstration. The concentrated force, speed, and precision far surpass any thrown spear or club strike. Silence falls over the tribe, a recognition of superior technology. The hole in the hide is not just a physical tear, it is a rupture in their worldview. They confront a new reality. Tools and knowledge exist beyond their comprehension. The prisoner, once despised, becomes the keeper of a divine form of power. The prisoner's decision to use his last arrow to save the one who tortured him instead of fleeing reveals a complex psychological moment. It may be a rapid calculation that he cannot survive alone, or an instinctive revival of primal cooperation against a different species. The precise shot into the beast's eye is the clearest proof of intellect triumphing over raw strength. Humanity, though physically weak, conquered nature's giants through distant, precise, lethal attacks. The captor's life now owes a debt to the captive. The rope is lifted once more, but its psychological weight has changed forever. Forcing the prisoner to sit and sharpen stones symbolizes the birth of forced specialization. The victors harness the labor and knowledge of the defeated to serve the tribe's benefit. The rope linking his neck to a heavy stone anchors not just his body, but a mind that does not belong there. In the dim cave light, the sound of stone grinding against stone recurs like a clock's ticking. It is the sound of a new era emerging, an era where humans not only dominate nature but seek to dominate one another. This first prisoner becomes the foundational block of complex human society, unjust, efficient, brutal, yet paradoxically more civilized.